Hey everybody. I wanted to talk real quickly on this video about your study guide, which is going to be posted the same time this video will be will go live for you. And so that it covers chapters 8, 9, and 10. We didn't talk about through the highlights here, and then you'll see the rest on your study guide. And we will talk about this on the 30th when we get back to class. But real quickly, the highlights are the event triangle. The event triangle is a combination of the event itself, the location or sponsors, and then fans. So the triangles would be the event, location, the sponsors, and the fans, and all those tie together. Of course, without sponsors, you don't really have a profitable event, but also you need fans that who will buy tickets to your event. But you really need a sponsor to get the event going and to help build attention and support the event. Sponsor, and then sponsors want the fans to buy their products as well. That's why they're sponsoring the event. So everything is obviously clearly tied together. So that's what we call the event triangle. We're going to talk a little more about that and how promotional events take place. Obviously, the book talks about the big four. We've just seen the Grammys. The other ones are the Oscars. Another one is Cannes, which is an international film event held in France, of course. The Emmys are the number 3, and then the Tonys. And then if you can win all of those, you are a GOAT, a Grammy, Oscar, an Oscar, an Academy Award, and a Tony Award winner. So that also means greatest of all time that we use in sports. But if you're a GOAT winner, you have won an award in each one of those categories. All right, so a couple other things real quickly. Obviously, sponsorship plays a huge role in everything you do for an event. It's always best when you think of an event, when you plan it, that you try and get a sponsor that would be that would tie in very well with it, that has the opportunity to sell its own personal goods along the same line as the event itself. So obviously having Nike with football or Nike with any sport, Gatorade as well. I mean, those are the go-tos all the time. Those companies have been approached millions of times. So think about another company, obviously car companies, Coke, Pepsi, they've all been approached. So what else could you think about that would be an appropriate sponsor? Obviously Home Depot, Lowe's, if you're thinking about sports or even any kind of big event. So let's say that you wanted to put on a, we'll stick with sports. We'll stick with pickleball. So pickleball is the latest. Let's say you want to create a pickleball league. And so what would be a great sport, great sponsor to tie in with that? Energy bars would be one I would think of. Insurance, obviously, maybe a hospital or an insurance, a company, a health insurance company like Kaiser Permanente. What else could be an appropriate one? Sriracha might be a neat sponsor. So these are companies that might be kind of out of the box, so to speak. And so you always want to think about how they could be involved. So the second thing you have to think about is how do I leverage that brand? How can I help the sponsors sell the product? So, obviously there is a built-in audience coming to the event itself. We're thinking post-pandemic when people come back to the stands or come back to the studio or come back to the arenas. But you can also figure out how do we tie in. So obviously there's name rights. So it's the Sriracha Pickleball Championship. So that's part of it. But we want to think about the event triangle. So fans coming through the turnstile, so to speak, each one gets a coupon. Maybe each one gets a small sample bottle. Those are the two ways to do it. We could do contests at the stadium itself where people could win. We could do things at the grocery store where there's coupons tied to that. We could do displays you have to pay an additional fee to be there, a slotting fee to put a display inside the grocery store, but you could tie in local grocery stores to the event itself. If it's a pickleball series that Sriracha is sponsoring, you could go to each market and do that as well. So these are ways to do this. Obviously, there's hospitality for not only the executive of Sriracha, but you want to invite the executives of Sriracha want to invite their key buyers. So people from Costco, people from Walmart, people from Target, who would be their guests. These are the big buyers of their products. Any kind of VIPs, important clients that deal with them, trucking companies that if they're contracted to transport Sriracha from destination to destination, the manufacturer, if it's made off-site someplace. So those are all things to consider. Other things to look at, celebrity advantage. Celebrity, having a celebrity tied into this obviously brings more attention. You always have to be careful, as I've talked about before, with a celebrity who can't kind of be greater than the product itself. Obviously, LeBron James now is becoming an entire enterprise. He just signed a huge deal with Pepsi, but up prior to that, he was the face of Sprite, which is a Coca-Cola product. So now he's no longer associated with that. He's changed teams. He's now going to promote the new Mountain Dew products. I don't know if you saw this, but he also has invested in Fenway Sports. Fenway is a multi-purpose management company that owns, obviously, the Boston Red Sox, Fenway Park, and they also own several NASCAR teams. So he is a big sports owner now and a big promoter. So he is larger than life, so to speak. So I wouldn't necessarily, if I'm a small brand, want to be involved with him, probably couldn't afford it. Advantages and disadvantages. So he has created a great career for himself, but also he's created a great career for himself post career or post athletic career. So he's a great example, great role model. There are other athletes. If you are a good sports manager, if you're a good sports I got a child coming. If you're a good sports marketer, you can find out which future star would be a good, an appropriate spokesperson for your brand. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes comes to mind with his involvement with State Farm, and I'm sure that he will continue to grow and be a great role model for sports in general. And it certainly has done great things for State Farm, and he's just an enjoyable person to watch, both in his element as a quarterback and then also as a spokesperson. Obviously, his managers are already thinking about what he should be doing post-career 20 years from now. Obviously, other things to do when you're planning an event is to create a strategy and that's the steps and timeline to promote your product, to identify your target customers, to set your promotional goals, to develop your budget that goes along with it, to select your promotional mix, of course, your pricing strategy. Do you have a special discount price for your product during the time that it's going to be sponsoring this pickleball series? Do you have promotional coupons that go with it? What kind of advertising would you use that would accompany this? And then you need to do ROI. And ROI is obviously return on investment. You have to measure all this. And I have included a series of material on page 3 of your study guide that look at how you get ROI from your investment. So I've given you an example of a local community 5K and the number of runners, the number of spectators, and how much is being spent there in terms of sponsorship. And then how do you measure all that and come up with a cost per thousand, as well as the potential exposure value you get from that involvement. So take a look at that and determine how you get your return on investment, because at the end of the day, this is what you have to supply your sponsor. They need to know what ROI they are getting. So if I put $250,000 into the pickleball series or the pickleball championship, pickleball league, I want to get at least my break-even point back. I want to sell at least $250,000 worth of product. But more than that, I want to sell a lot more, and I want to get a lot more impressions. So this is how you measure this. You have to determine what kind of exposure you get, fans in the stands. If you get any kind of television coverage, you have to measure that. If you get exposure through media, in terms of an article in the Wall Street Journal. That is huge because the Wall Street Journal is so important for any small business, any potential investment capabilities in terms of getting on the stock market, in terms of going public if you're not already public, or if you are public, in terms of increasing the share price, getting other investors to look at the brand, at the product or the brand itself. And then you can look at down the road opportunities to do brand extensions, opportunities to acquire other companies, opportunities for you to be acquired. So all this plays a role in ROI. So you can address all of these as well as the potential for sales at the local level. Consumers like us buying the product. And we want to even get testimonials that would appear on our website. And we need to track where people are buying the product. And that would be, to me, if I'm the sponsor of the pickleball series, I would go to the pickleball executives and say, look, I sell most of my sriracha in the Smile part of the country. The Smile part is from California through to Florida, maybe up to Texas. So I would want my games in that area where I already sell the products. But then obviously, if we have fresh territory like the Midwest, or like up in Seattle and maybe New York City, or even further up there, Maine, where they've got lobsters, why wouldn't I want to put sriracha on a lobster? So I want to hit those areas too. So I would want to have games up in those locations, or have the series play there as well. So then I would look at arenas and how I could be involved with sponsors there. The other thing to consider, if I'm the overall sponsor, I want to make sure that sponsors within each city, so each city will probably get a sponsor for the game itself, or they'll get a sponsor for the stadium. I want to make sure that I can work with each one of those companies as well. Give you a good example. When I used to run a racing series called the Trans Am, we had a sponsor. It was Bendix. Bendix makes brakes, but they also made Fram filters. And Fram was a huge sponsor, a huge competitor to Motorcraft. Motorcraft was made by Ford. Well, Motorcraft sponsored one of the races, and it was the Motorcraft 100. Well, Bendix got their nose out of joint because they were very upset that the local racetrack, this was up in Northern California, used Motorcraft, and Bendix owned Fram, but it was Bendix brake series. So the racetrack said we have every right to bring in Motorcraft, but I had to delicately work through that scenario so that the Bendix brakes people didn't get their nose out of joint and get all upset because their competitor or their sister brand had a competitor as the sponsor. So we did this whole hat trick, that you do at the end. It's the hat shuffle at the end of the race where everybody puts on a Bendix hat in the winner's circle. Then they put on a Motorcraft hat, and then a couple of idiots had to have the Fram hat too. So it got, we did it all very carefully where we had separate hats, have hat shuffles, have separate photographs. But those are things that you have to work your way through. So if I'm Sriracha, obviously I don't want to have Tabasco as a sponsor. If there is Tabasco as a sponsor of one of these events, I'm going to be upset, but we're going to have to work through it. And we have to make sure that Sriracha comes out number one, Tabasco down here, if they have to have Tabasco as a sponsor. And believe me, Tabasco will want to get involved in that. They're based in Louisiana. They would probably want to sponsor a local game. So that's just the way things work. It's very competitive. I always say all's fair in love and sponsorship. So those are kind of the main things that I wanted to touch on. You can look at the study guide. So when we come back to class on the 30th, we'll go through the study guide. We'll go through chapter 10 very quickly, kind of a repeat of what I'm doing right now on the screen. And we'll go over the questions of the midterm. And then you'll have a week, I guess, maybe till about the 6th to do it. Is that what I said? Yes, you'll have a week. So that's kind of where we're at. I will have a great break. If you have questions, you know how to reach me. Thank you. Take care. Bye.